In the flattest landscape in North America, a rise of a few inches is enough to build a jungle. Step off the sawgrass and up onto ground barely higher than your ankle, and the sky closes over you. The air goes still and green. Trees with peeling copper bark lean across the path. Roots pour down from the branches like frozen water, and the temperature drops. This is not a mountain. It is a hardwood hammock, and it is one of the strangest small worlds on the continent. This is the Gumbo Limbo Trail in the Royal Palm area of Everglades National Park, near the town of Homestead in the far south of Florida. It is a short paved loop, roughly 4/10 of a mile, and it takes maybe 20 minutes to walk. It is one of the smallest trails in a park of more than 1.5 million acres. It is also one of the most concentrated pieces of tropical forest anywhere in the United States. The trail begins beside the Royal Palm Visitor Center and immediately turns away from the open glades into the shade. There is no climb, no view, no summit. What there is instead is density. Within a few paces, the canopy has closed, the light has gone from white to green, and the ground on either side is a chaos of ferns, vines, fallen leaves, and gray pitted stone. Everything here is happening within about 3 feet of vertical relief. The word hammock in Florida has nothing to do with a swinging bed. It means an island of dense hardwood forest standing slightly above a wetland. Seen from the air, the Everglades are scattered with them, dark green teardrops floating in a pale sea of sawgrass, usually pointed at one end where water has flowed around them for centuries. Each one is a raised patch of limestone with a forest growing on it. Each one is a separate little country with its own climate. Everything depends on those inches. The Everglades are a wetland that floods for half the year and most trees drown. But a rise of even a foot or two means the ground here stays above the water long enough for a hardwood forest to establish. Get it slightly wrong and you have marsh. Get it slightly right and you have this. In a landscape with almost no vertical relief, elevation is not scenery. It is the whole argument. The rise itself is limestone. South Florida is built on it, a pale porous rock made from the shells and skeletons of sea creatures that lived here when this was shallow ocean. It is soft, it is soluble, and it is full of holes. Almost no soil covers it. What passes for soil in a hammock is a thin skin of decaying leaves lying directly on top of stone, which means the forest is essentially growing on rock and building the rock as it goes. Look at the ground beside the path, and you will see the stone is eaten through. Pits, hollows, sinks, some of them deep enough to swallow a person. These are solution holes, and they are made by the forest itself. Rainwater picks up carbon dioxide, decomposing leaves make it more acidic still, and the resulting weak acid drips down and dissolves the limestone grain by grain. The trees are slowly digesting the rock they stand on. That same acid does something else. It works hardest at the edges of the hammock, where the leaf litter meets the standing water, and over centuries it dissolves a shallow trench right around the island. Ecologists call it the moat. It is deeper, it holds water longer, and it is often the last place to dry out. A hardwood hammock is therefore a fortress with a real defensive ditch, carved by nothing more violent than falling leaves and rain. The moat matters because of fire. The Everglades burn. Lightning is common, the dry season is long, and the surrounding marsh and pineland carry flame readily. Hardwood hammocks do not. They are humid inside, they hold moisture, and the wet moat at their edge stops most fires at the threshold. That is why the pinelands a short distance away are open and sunlit, and the hammock is dark and closed. Fire draws the border between the two, and the moat holds the line. There is no spring or autumn in this country, only wet and dry. The wet season runs roughly from May into October, when afternoon storms flood the glades and the water creeps up around the hammocks. Then the rains stop, the water withdraws, and by the middle of the dry season the surrounding marsh can be cracked mud. We are walking here in January, deep in the dry half of the year, which is exactly when the moat earns its keep. And now the tree the trail is named for, Bursera cimaruba, the Gumbo Limbo. It is easy to recognize and impossible to forget because its bark is a coppery, sunburnt red, and it flakes away constantly in thin, papery curls, exposing pale green skin underneath. It grows fast, it grows big, and it is native not only to South Florida but to the Caribbean islands and to Central and South America. It is a tropical tree that happens to live in the United States. Everybody in South Florida knows its nickname. They call it the tourist tree because it is red and peeling, like a visitor who spent too long on the beach. It is a joke that has followed the tree for generations, and it is a good one, but the bark is doing serious work. The peeling sheds epiphytes and climbing vines before they can take hold, and the thin green layer beneath can photosynthesize through the trunk itself. The tree gives up a sticky aromatic resin, and people have used it for a very long time, as a glue, as a varnish, and burned as incense. The wood is soft and light and easy to carve, and it became the traditional timber for the carousel horses of the American fairground. Somewhere in the country, there are painted wooden horses on old merry-go-rounds that began as trees like these. It is also famously willing to grow from a cut branch pushed into the ground. The other signature tree of the hammock is stranger still. The Strangler fig begins life as a seed dropped by a bird high in the canopy into a crook of another tree. It germinates up there in the air on nothing and sends roots down the trunk of its host. Those roots reach the ground, thicken, fuse together, and become a rigid cage. Meanwhile, the fig spreads its own leaves above and takes the light away. The host tree dies inside the cage. It rots away over years until what stands there is a hollow lattice of fused fig root, a tree shaped like the ghost of another tree, with an empty column where the original trunk used to be. You can walk up and put your arm into the gap. It is one of the most quietly ruthless things in the plant world, and the hammock is full of it. Here is the thing that makes this forest genuinely odd. The trees of a South Florida hammock are, in the main, not North American trees. The Canopy species are overwhelmingly of West Indian origin, the flora of Cuba and the Bahamas and the wider Caribbean. They are here because their seeds crossed water. Birds carried them in their guts and dropped them. Wind and drifting debris carried others. This forest is a colony, and it arrived from the south. Hurricanes did the heavy lifting. Every storm that runs up from the tropics is also a delivery system, carrying seeds, birds, and floating material across the straits and dumping them on the Florida coast. The same winds that snapped these trees in half are the winds that brought them here in the first place. A hurricane is not an interruption to this ecosystem. It is one of the ways the ecosystem is assembled and reassembled over and over. So walking here is closer to walking in the Caribbean than in the rest of the continental United States. Mahogany, wild tamarind, mastic, live oak among them, one of the few temperate holdouts, wild coffee in the understory, ferns everywhere, and air plants wedged into the forks of branches, taking their moisture straight from the humidity. The list of species is long, and most of the names on it belong to the islands. One of them deserves respect. Poisonwood is a common hammock tree, and its sap is severe, considerably worse than poison ivy. You can identify it by the black tarry blotches on its bark, where the sap has oozed and oxidized. Do not touch it, do not shelter under it in the rain, and do not burn it. Traditionally and conveniently, the antidote is said to grow next to it. The Gumbo Limbo often does. The vertical surfaces here are their own habitat. Bark holds lichen, moss, tiny ferns, resurrection fern that curls up brown and dead in the dry season and greens again within hours of rain. Vines climb everything. Orchids and bromeliads perch in the branches, rooted in nothing but bark and air. In a hammock, there is no unused surface. Every trunk is real estate, and everything is renting. Above the canopy in places rises the tree that gave this area its name. The royal palm, Ristonia regia, a smooth gray column that can stand well clear of everything around it, with a bright green crownshaft below the fronds. It belongs to Cuba and the Caribbean as much as to Florida, and its fruit is eaten and spread by birds. In a wind it drops its fronds rather than fight, which is a reasonable strategy in hurricane country. And then there are the snails. Ligu's tree snails live on the smooth bark of these trees, grazing algae and fungus, and they come in an astonishing range of colored bands, dozens of named forms, many of them once restricted to a single hammock. Isolated islands of forest produced isolated populations, and isolated populations diverged. Collectors nearly wiped them out. They are most easily seen after rain when they move. People have lived in South Florida for thousands of years. Historically, the Calusa held the southwest coast and the Tequesta the area around what is now Miami and Biscayne Bay, and both built with what the sea gave them, raising mounds of shell and living from fish, shellfish, and the wetlands. European contact, disease, and slave raiding destroyed those societies. By the middle of the 18th century, they had effectively been broken apart. The peoples of the Everglades today are the Seminole and the Miccosukee. They are not a memory. The Seminole tribe of Florida and the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida are federally recognized sovereign nations with their own governments, and their communities are here now, including along the Tamiami Trail to the north of us. Their ancestors were pushed into this country during the Seminole Wars of the 19th century and were never fully removed from it. The hammock we are standing in has a name older than the park. Early visitors called it Paradise Key, and it was celebrated, a rich stand of royal palms and tropical hardwoods sitting out in the glades. When a road, the Ingraham Highway, was pushed out from Florida City toward it in the 1910s, the key became reachable, and reachable meant vulnerable. Plants were dug up and carried off. Palms were taken. The place began to be stripped. It was saved by the Florida Federation of Women's Clubs, led by May Mann Jennings, who campaigned to have Paradise Key protected. In 1915, the legislature agreed. In 1916, the state granted 960 acres, and Mary Lily Kennon Flagler Bingham, the widow of the railroad builder Henry Flagler, matched it with a further grant, bringing the protected land to about 1,920 acres. It became Royal Palm State Park, the first state park in Florida. The dedication was on the 23rd of November, 1916. A motorcade of about 168 cars ran in relays out along the new highway and brought more than 1,000 people to the edge of the hammock for the ceremony. Consider that this happened before American women had the vote. The park was created by an act of the legislature and handed to a women's organization to run, and run it they did for more than 30 years. In 1919, they built the Royal Palm Lodge at the hammock to house the caretaker and the visiting scientists who were beginning to understand what this forest actually was. In 1921, the state added a further 2,080 acres, taking the park to around 4,000. For 3 decades, this small building on a limestone rise was the only real base for the study and protection of the southern Everglades. Everything larger grew out of it. Congress authorized Everglades National Park in 1934, but authorizing is not funding, and the land had to be assembled first. It took 13 years. President Truman dedicated the park on the 6th of December, 1947, and Royal Palm State Park was folded into it. May Mann Jennings was there, presenting the park her federation had held for a generation to the nation. This trail is the direct descendant of that decision. The lodge itself did not last. A new visitor center was built in 1952, and the old building was sold, moved to Homestead, and lived out its second life as a motel. It was destroyed by Hurricane Andrew in 1992. There is nothing of it here now. The forest has taken the ground back so completely that you would never guess a lodge and a caretaker, and a generation of botanists once stood on this exact rise. Hurricanes have gone through this hammock repeatedly. Donna in 1960 was the last great storm to cross the peninsula before Andrew came ashore in August of 1992. Andrew stripped the leaves from virtually every large tree in its path here, and roughly a quarter of the trees in the hammocks were thrown down or badly broken. Around a quarter of the park's royal palms and about a third of its pines were damaged. And then it grew back. That is the point about this forest and the reason it looks the way it does. A hammock is built to be knocked flat. The Gumbo Limbo can regrow from a broken stump or a fallen branch. The gaps let light in and the understory races upward. The trees that live here are tropical trees from a hurricane coast, and they have been doing this for a very long time. Step back far enough and the logic is clear. A flat, wet plain of sawgrass, a floor of soft limestone, and scattered across it these small raised islands where the rock stands a little higher, the water drains a little sooner, the fire cannot reach, and a piece of the Caribbean has been allowed to take root. Hundreds of them out there in the grass. This trail is a doorway into just one. It is worth remembering how narrow the margin is. The whole thing rests on a rise of a few inches and a rhythm of water that people have spent a century interrupting with canals and roads and pumps. A hammock cannot be moved. It is where it is because the stone is where it is. Protect the water and the forest looks after itself. Get the water wrong and no amount of good intention will bring it back. The loop closes and the light begins to return at the edge of the trees. Behind us is a forest that arrived by bird and by storm, that eats its own bedrock, that digs a moat against fire, and that fits into a circle you can walk in 20 minutes. It has been rescued once by a group of women with no vote and a great deal of determination, and it is still standing. Then the sawgrass opens ahead, the sky comes back, the temperature climbs, and the jungle is behind us as though it had never been there at all. A few inches of limestone. That is the whole difference between an open marsh and a piece of the Caribbean. It is a good thing to carry out of here that the smallest changes in a flat country can build the richest places in it, and that they can be lost just as easily. Thank you for watching. Follow for more trails of the world.